Hello everyone, I'm Mr.Graveveil, a horror storyteller. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. Now, let's begin. I didn't plan on telling this story, but after 10 years away from the force, it keeps coming back to me, usually when the house gets too quiet or the nights feel too long. Maybe sharing it will loosen its grip. It was January 17th, 2005, a Monday. I remember the cold before anything else. The kind that settles into your bones and makes every movement slower, heavier. I was in patrol car 46 with my partner, Mason, when the dispatch came through. Unit 46, respond to a domestic disturbance. Female caller claims her boyfriend is trying to kill her. Address is 1843 Lyman Street. The words hit hard. It wasn't the first call like that, and it wouldn't be the last, but something in the operator's tone felt different. Urgent, yes, but quieter than usual. Almost like she didn't want to say it too loud. Lyman Street was tucked into the far end of the district. Dead-end road. A line of houses with unlit porches, wind pushing garbage cans down the sidewalk. When we arrived, the clouds were thick and heavy above us, casting everything in that bruised, gray-blue light that comes before a storm. The porch light of 1843 flickered. The tree beside the driveway was stripped bare, its limbs clicking together like bones in the wind. We stepped out of the cruiser and approached the front door. I felt the tightness in my chest before we even knocked. Mason glanced at me. He must have felt it too. Police. I called out, "Open the door." No answer. Just the sound of wind chimes twisting on a loose hook. Mason looked at me once more, then reared back and kicked the door with everything he had. The wood gave way with a crack. We entered slowly, sweeping left and right, hands near our holsters. Empty. No one downstairs. But even then, I could tell something wasn't right. The house didn't just feel empty, it felt waiting. We moved deeper into the living room, each step pressing into carpet that muffled our boots. The place was orderly, too orderly. A clean couch, framed photos on the wall, a coffee table with a half-burned candle. Everything looked untouched, no sign of a struggle. No voices, just a silence so thick it pressed on the skin. I swept the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed, the faucet had a slow drip, but no movement. No shadow slipping by. Mason peered into the dining room. Same story. Stillness. We regrouped at the bottom of the staircase. "You hear that?" I asked. Mason cocked his head. It was faint, but their soft, irregular sobs drifting from upstairs, almost like someone trying to hold them back. We drew our weapons, eyes locked on the top of the staircase. "Ma'am?" I called gently, keeping my voice low. "We're here to help." "You're safe now." The crying stopped. My stomach turned. That silence again, but colder this time. Mason took the first step up. I followed. The wood creaked under our weight. Every step sounded louder than the last. Halfway up, the voice came. "But he's still here," she said. It was a woman's voice. Flat, not panicked. No tears now. Like she was stating a fact she didn't expect us to believe. Mason froze. "We've cleared the whole downstairs," I replied. "There's no one else here." "You're safe, ma'am." Before she could answer, the front door left wide open slammed shut downstairs. A loud, definitive bang that echoed up the stairwell. Mason spun toward the sound. I could see his posture shift, his fingers tighten around the grip of his gun. "Just the wind," he said, but the words lacked confidence. Then, from behind the bathroom door, "Are you sure, Officer Bradley?" My blood ran cold. She knew my name. Mason and I had entered silently, spoken only in neutral tones, and not once had we said our names aloud. Not to her, not to each other. We were trained for that, and yet she said it calm and clear. "Officer Bradley." I raised my hand to signal Mason to hold his position. The hallway upstairs had 3 doors, one at the far end, cracked open. Another to the left, fully shut, and the one to the right bathroom door closed, with faint light seeping through the bottom. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my tone steady, "can you confirm your location? Are you in the bathroom?" Silence. Mason shifted beside me, visibly tense. I could hear the shortness of his breath, that quiet panic that creeps in when your instincts scream that something's wrong, but your training tells you to press on. "I'm not asking again," Mason said, stepping forward. "If you're in danger, open the door. If not, step back, we're coming in." Still nothing. I stepped closer to the bathroom door, pressed my ear gently against it. Breathing, barely audible but steady. Someone was in there. Then her voice again, quieter now, like it was coming from deeper inside the room. "Don't let him open the door." "Mason," I said, backing away, "give it a second." He hesitated, foot already raised, ready to kick. And then she said it. "If he touches this door, I'll visit his family, one by one, at night, when the house is still, and I'll break down a door of my own." The voice had changed. It was deeper, not like before. Mason lowered his foot slowly. His face was pale. The hallway felt tighter. The air had weight now. And I could tell we were no longer in control. We stood in that hallway for what felt like a long time. Neither of us moved. Mason's fingers were twitching at his side, and I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten. He wasn't breathing through his nose anymore, just short, shallow mouth breaths, the kind that come when your body is trying not to make noise. There was no sound from the bathroom, just that faint light still glowing under the door. I was thinking fast. This wasn't like anything we'd dealt with before. No domestic dispute, no unstable suspect. This was a presence, one that was too calm, one that knew things it shouldn't. "How did she know your name?" Mason finally whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know how. I stepped forward again, slow, cautious. I called out, "Ma'am, you need to speak to us clearly. We're not here to hurt you." A moment passed, then the voice returned. Softer this time. "I already told you, he's still here." I felt a chill run across my back. The kind you feel when you realize something's wrong, but can't see it yet. I looked at Mason, and his face told me the same thing mine probably did. We didn't believe her, but we didn't feel safe either. "She might be right next to the door," I said. "We don't want to injure her if she's sitting down." "I'm done waiting," Mason muttered. Before I could stop him, he backed up and drove his foot into the door. The wood cracked but didn't give way. A second kick louder. The bathroom door splintered and swung inward with a bang. Empty. No one. No sign of anyone. No curtains fluttering. No footprints on the rug. The bathroom was clean, quiet, still, and cold. But the oddest part? The air felt used. As if someone had been breathing there just moments before. As if whatever or whoever we'd been speaking to had only just left. Mason scanned the room like a man looking for an answer that wouldn't come. I stepped back into the hallway. My mouth was dry. My ears were ringing faintly. We had come expecting to save someone. Now we weren't sure if there had ever been anyone to save at all. We spent the next 15 minutes combing through the house again. Every room, every closet, the attic, even the crawl space behind the washer. Nothing. No signs of a break-in. No blood. No indication anyone had ever been locked inside that bathroom, much less threatened. But we had both heard the voice. We'd both spoken to her. I found myself replaying every second, every word, looking for something I missed. A shadow, a breath, a clue in the tone. The radio on my vest crackled faintly. Dispatch asked for an update. I didn't respond. Mason did. His voice sounded different, too formal, too clean. He was clinging to the routine. I understood why. When we returned upstairs, I stared at the bathroom one last time. It was completely still. The light under the door had gone out, and I realized No one had ever turned it on. The bulb had been dead the whole time. There was no power in that fixture. That detail undid me more than the voice. Mason and I stood at the top of the stairs again. We exchanged a glance, not fear exactly, not confusion either, just the silent agreement that we were done. We made our way down. No words, no wrap-up. We didn't touch anything else. Didn't call for backup. Didn't question what we'd heard. Not because we weren't curious, but because the house didn't want us there anymore. At the front door, Mason paused. "I'm not sleeping tonight," he muttered. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to say what I was thinking. I don't think she was ever in that bathroom. And I don't think she was ever afraid. We didn't speak on the way back to the cruiser. Mason sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched. I noticed his hands were trembling slightly, just enough to make his fingers tap rhythmically on his thigh. He didn't ask for the heat, didn't turn on the radio. Just silence. I shifted into reverse, headlights casting long shadows across the driveway. As we pulled away from the curb, I glanced at the house one last time, not out of curiosity, but instinct. I don't know why. Mason didn't look back. Not once. His eyes stayed forward, like he was afraid to turn around. I drove slower than usual. Like speeding away might anger whatever had decided to speak to us that night. I had a strange feeling, too heavy to name. Not fear exactly, not yet. But I knew that whatever had happened back there wasn't over. Mason never asked what I saw when we left. I never told him. He was shaken enough, and I figured silence was the only kindness I could offer. But the truth is, I looked back one last time, just before we turned the corner. There was a garbage can by the side of the house, next to the gate. Something crouched beside it. Dark, wrong. At first, I thought it might be a person. A neighbor, maybe. But no one moved. And as my eyes adjusted, I realized the thing wasn't crouching. It was unfolding, rising. I couldn't see its face, only the shape. Tall, taller than the house as it stood. No sound, no movement, just that slow, deliberate lift, like something that had been watching us the whole time finally decided to stand. That image stayed with me, still does. I don't know what it was, but whatever spoke from behind that door, it wasn't trapped. It was waiting. You'd think after 6 years of working night shifts at a hospital, I'd be numb to the weirdness. Honestly, I thought I was. Until that Thursday night, it started like any other. Clocked in at 11, grabbed the same bitter coffee from the same sad machine, and started my rounds like I always do. The hospital at night is a different animal. During the day, it's buzzing. At night, it's just you, flickering lights, and enough silence to hear your own doubts. The receptionist bailed early, something about food poisoning or bad shrimp. I didn't ask. That left just me and one nurse downstairs who keeps her earbuds in like she's avoiding the world. Fine by me. I went through the first 3 floors. Nothing unusual, unless you count the vending machine that likes to randomly make that dying whale noise. Then, while passing the main stairwell, I got this weird urge to look up, like the air changed. I didn't. I've learned not to indulge every creepy instinct. Then came the flicker. Lights dipped, came back, old building. Happens all the time. Still, it was enough to make me pause with my coffee halfway to my mouth. And I don't know why I didn't take a sip. Maybe I didn't want the jolt. Or maybe something in my gut whispered, "You're gonna need all your nerves steady tonight." A few minutes later, the motion alert pinged. 4th floor. Which was funny, because the 4th floor's been shut down for months. The motion alert came through the panel just as I was finishing a walkthrough of the 2nd floor. Zone 4. That meant the 4th floor, the one under renovation, supposedly sealed off. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, waiting for it to stop blinking. Sometimes the system picks up rats or loose air vents, but the fourth floor was supposed to be completely clear. No equipment, no lights, no staff. I took the stairs. I always do when it's something like this. It's quiet, and I can hear if anything's moving above me. As I pushed the fire door open, I caught that familiar scent of dust and drying plaster. But there was something else under it. A faint, sour note in the air. The corridor ahead was only half lit. Some of the ceiling panels were exposed, wires hanging down. I stepped carefully, eyes scanning left and right, the sensor on the wall still blinking red. It was positioned right at the intersection up ahead, meaning whatever had triggered it passed just around the corner. I slowed down, focused on every sound. Nothing, just the weak hum of electricity, barely audible. I reached the junction and stepped into view. At first, I thought it was just more construction grime on the tiles. Then I noticed the streaks, long, uneven, and deep red. A trail, fresh enough to still glisten, leading into the darkness ahead. I stayed still for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. The trail curved slightly to the right, vanishing into a section of the hallway where the lights had either failed or were never installed. It wasn't a straight line. Whatever made it had stopped and shifted, leaving smears like hands or knees dragging along the surface. The kind of trail that isn't left by something standing. I stepped forward, slow, careful. The air felt heavier now, warmer too, as if the ventilation on this floor wasn't working properly, or maybe it was just me. My skin felt damp under the uniform. As I walked, I noticed scuff marks along the wall, scratches near the baseboards. Not fresh, but not old either. I tried the radio on my shoulder. Static, nothing else. I switched channels, same result. The silence was no longer just quiet. It felt intentional, like something had blanketed the floor in it. That's when I noticed. The emergency light at the end of the hall was out. The trail led toward a door, slightly open. It looked like one of the old surgical suites, long since closed and emptied. I stopped just outside the frame, staring at the door. It wasn't the blood that bothered me the most. It was the position of the door. Open just enough to suggest someone might be on the other side, watching, listening. I took a breath, stepped forward, and pushed it slowly. The hinges moaned in protest. The door opened. And what I saw inside didn't answer anything. It only raised more questions. The room was cold, not ventilated cold, a different kind. The kind that feels like it's sitting just under your skin, waiting to climb in. I stepped in slowly, sweeping the flashlight across the space. Surgical lights hung above like frozen eyes. Cabinets lined the walls, most with their glass cracked or dust-covered. The floor, once white, was stained in long, faded streaks. But something newer stood out, fresh smudges scattered in awkward patterns, almost like footprints or drag marks. No sign of anyone, no sounds, just that heavy air, like the room hadn't been disturbed in years but somehow knew I was there. Near the center, I saw something unusual, a folded hospital gown, stained. It looked damp. I crouched to take a closer look and noticed small splinters on the floor. From wood. Strange, since the room was mostly metal and tile. When I stood up, I glanced toward a stainless steel cabinet. Its door was ajar, not wide, but enough to see the dark reflection inside. My own face looked back, only it didn't move the way I did. I froze. It was only for a second, but I swear I saw my reflection shift before I did. Like it anticipated me, like it was watching. I turned fast, checked behind me, nothing. But when I looked back, the reflection was gone. Then I heard it, a soft scrape. Not far, close enough that I should have seen it. My grip tightened on the flashlight, hands slick with sweat. I wasn't alone. I knew that now. I stayed in that room longer than I should have. I knew it. Every instinct told me to leave, to get out before whatever I'd felt caught up with me. But I couldn't move, not yet. The cabinet door was still open. Nothing inside. Just the dull metal interior and a faint smear, like something oily had touched it recently. I shut it carefully. The sound of metal on metal echoed far too loudly. Then from behind me, the floor creaked, just once. Sharp and deliberate. I turned quickly, flashlight up. The room was still empty. I checked every corner, under tables, behind carts. Nothing, but it didn't feel empty. On the floor near the far wall, the trail of blood reappeared. It had continued, not obvious at first, but there if you followed it closely. It led to the back of the room, where a side door stood half hidden behind equipment. The kind of door that's not meant to be used often. It was open, barely, just enough. I approached it slowly. The air coming from the gap felt wrong, humid, stale, like something had been breathing into it for too long. I reached out, pushed it open with the edge of the flashlight. Darkness. As I stepped inside, my foot touched something soft. I looked down. A shoe. A patient's shoe. Lying on its side, alone. That's when I heard it again, the same sound from earlier. A scrape, slow and steady. This time, it came from right behind me. I turned fast, heart slamming against my ribs. The flashlight beam jerked across the walls. Empty. Still. But the air had changed. Thicker now. It pressed against my skin like steam, only colder. I couldn't hear the sound again, but I knew whatever made it hadn't stopped. It had just grown quieter. I backed away slowly, keeping the light forward. No sudden movements. I didn't even want to blink. Each step took effort. My legs felt heavy, like the hallway floor was trying to hold me back. The emergency lights above flickered again, one by one, starting from the far end, as if something was following the power. Or following me. The elevator was down the corridor. 20, maybe 30 steps. I moved faster. Halfway there, the light behind me shut off completely, total black. Just the dim path ahead and the pounding in my ears. I reached the elevator, pressed the call button hard. No response, pressed again, still nothing. Then I felt it. Not a touch, just presence. Close, right behind my left shoulder. Like when someone leans in to whisper but never says a word. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I stepped sideways until my back hit the cold wall. Whatever was there, it wasn't leaving. I don't remember how I made it back to the security office. My body moved, but my mind was somewhere else, stuck in that hallway, with whatever had been breathing inches from my ear. When I closed the door and locked it behind me, the silence returned. Not calm, just empty. I sat down, hands shaking, and pulled up the camera feed from the 4th floor. Most of the angles were useless, static, black frames, or frozen images from hours ago. But one feed, the one from the main hallway just outside the surgical suite, was still working. I watched myself walk into frame. Flashlight in hand, cautious, unsure. Then, something else. A shadow behind me. I didn't notice it at the time, but on the screen, it was clear. A tall, still shape, just past the corner where the blood trail had started. No movement, no face, just there. I stepped forward on the footage. The shape didn't follow, it disappeared. As if the camera blinked, I rewound, played it again. Same moment, same vanishing. It hadn't followed me. It had never needed to. It was already there. Then a new ping motion alert. 4th floor. Again, I stared at the monitor, the same hallway. Empty now, no shadow, no blood, just the door. Slowly closing. My name is Eric Dalton. I used to be a police officer, but it's been years since I wore the badge. Some nights still pull me back, though not because of heroism or regret, but because something never left me, something I still can't explain. I wasn't always on the right side of the law. In my early 20s, I drifted through bad decisions. the kind that earn you a record and a few court dates. I tried to bury that part of me by joining the force, some twisted form of redemption, I guess. I answered hundreds of calls during my years on duty, but there's one that clings to my memory like a bloodstain. Cinder Valley, 1 a.m. A woman walking barefoot with a crying baby, talking to herself. That night took my partner, and it never gave him back. Marcus Hayes was my partner that year. Calm, level-headed, with a dry sense of humor that made even the worst shifts bearable. That night, we were parked in a narrow alley, hidden between old brick walls, waiting to catch speeders. The streets were mostly dead, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then the radio buzzed, a dispatch. Female, possibly in her 20s, barefoot, carrying a baby, murmuring to herself. Caller didn't stick around. Cinder Valley. Marcus looked over at me. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. But I wasn't. We arrived about 10 minutes later. The neighborhood looked like it hadn't slept in decades. Peeling paint, sagging porches, dim porch lights flickering like dying fireflies. We drove around the block a few times. Nothing. Not a single soul on the sidewalks. "She couldn't have gone far," Marcus said, scanning each alley and front yard. I felt it before I saw anything, that unease. Like stepping into a room that had just been vacated, where the air still carries someone else's heat. We parked and got out. Whatever we were walking into, it didn't feel like a routine call. The cruiser's doors closed with a dull thud, and we walked slowly down the cracked sidewalk. Porch lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the pavement. Marcus tapped his flashlight twice, checking the beam. We started knocking on doors. Most people didn't answer. A few peeked from upstairs windows, but no one wanted to get involved. That's when Marcus froze. "You see that?" I turned just in time to catch a glimpse, someone slipping behind a wooden gate attached to a house up the street. We jogged over. The gate creaked as we pushed it open. It led to a backyard drowned in shadows. Trees swayed quietly in the breeze. An old swing set creaked without rhythm. Marcus's flashlight shook slightly. "You all right?" I asked. "I'm good." "It's fine to be nervous." He didn't respond. The back door of the house opened suddenly. A woman in a nightgown stood there, confused but calm. "Evening, ma'am." "Sorry for the intrusion," I said. "We're looking for someone who might have come through here." She squinted. "I can't hear too well. Can you come inside?" I looked at Marcus. He nodded. I stepped in, thinking it'd be a quick explanation. It wasn't. Inside, the living room was dim and smelled faintly of old wood and lavender. The woman offered a chair, but I stayed standing. I kept it short, told her about the report, asked if she'd seen or heard anything unusual. She shook her head. Then it happened. A scream tore through the yard. "Marcus!" I rushed outside. He was standing dead still, his flashlight aimed upward. His eyes were wide and his breathing ragged. "Marcus!" "What happened?" "She was right here," he muttered. "I saw her." "She ran." "Which way?" He didn't look at me. "Up." "She ran up the wall." I stared at him. "The wall?" He pointed. 2 stories of siding led to a gutter and a small window. "I saw her, Eric. Hands and feet like an animal. No hesitation. She just went up." Marcus wasn't the type to joke, and he sure wasn't delusional. I'd never seen him like that, shaking, pale, like he'd seen something that didn't fit in this world. I looked back at the house, then to the gate he said she'd crossed. The bushes were still rustling. "All right," I said. "Let's move." We climbed over. The next yard was larger, but just as dark. Overgrown grass brushed against our boots as we moved quietly. Every step felt like it echoed louder than it should have. That's when we heard it. A baby. Crying. It was faint, coming from a small wooden shed tucked in the back corner. The kind of sound that shouldn't exist in a place like this. Marcus and I locked eyes, no words needed. I drew my weapon and kicked the door open. Empty. No woman. No movement. Just a baby lying in the center of the shed. Except it wasn't a baby, it was a doll. Plastic smooth, with a speaker embedded in its chest. The sound of crying played on a loop. Mechanical, repetitive, wrong. Marcus crouched down beside it. "What the hell is this?" I didn't answer. My stomach turned. Someone put this here. Someone planned for this to be found. Before we could process it, a scream rang out again, sharp and gutting, back toward the first yard. We both turned, but Marcus didn't move. He stood frozen, flashlight still in hand, but his eyes were locked somewhere else. "Marcus?" I called. No response. He was still standing there, stiff like stone, staring into the dark. "Marcus!" I shouted again, louder. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He looked terrified, like something had reached inside him and switched something off. "We have to move," I snapped. "Now." But he didn't follow. "I can't," he said finally, barely a whisper. I can't, Eric. I'm sorry." I wanted to grab him, shake him, anything, but another scream came from the house. The old woman. I had to choose. I jumped the fence again, heart pounding. She was by the glass door, pointing to the ground. She was there, she cried, just standing, staring at me. And she smiled. "God help me," she smiled. I turned to look, nothing. I asked which way the woman went, but before she could answer, another scream ripped through the night. Marcus, only this time. It was worse, raw, painful. I sprinted back, leaping over the gate like it wasn't even there. But he was gone. No Marcus. No doll. No sound. I shouted his name until my voice cracked. I circled the shed. Checked behind trees, under porches, inside trash bins. Nothing. Not a single footprint. No signs of struggle. Just silence pressing down on the yard like a blanket. I radioed for backup, barely holding my voice steady. Told them an officer was missing. Gave coordinates. Tried to explain, but how do you explain something like this? I stared at that empty space beside the shed where the doll had been. I don't know why, but I kept thinking about that mechanical cry, how cold and calculated it sounded. Like someone had studied us, knew how to bait us. When backup arrived, we scoured the area with dogs, drones, full perimeter checks. Nothing. That night ended with searchlights cutting through darkness and a pit in my stomach that's never really left. Marcus Hayes never showed up again. It became a cold case. His badge number was retired. His family never got closure. Some nights I lie awake thinking maybe she didn't take him. Maybe he followed her, willingly. A year passed. I stayed on the force, got assigned a new partner, Darren King. Good guy. Didn't ask too many questions. We still patrolled Cinder Valley sometimes. It never felt right driving through there. Like the shadows remembered me. One night we were sitting in the cruiser, sipping bad coffee and half listening to the radio. Then came the call. Dispatch mentioned a woman, barefoot, walking the streets. Murmuring, holding a baby. I didn't say anything. Darren looked at me. "You all right?" I nodded, but inside, something collapsed. Same street, same time, same description. It was happening again. And I couldn't tell if it was a warning or an invitation. It was just past 2:30 a.m. when the call came through. I was alone in my cruiser, parked on the shoulder of Route 94, nursing bad coffee and trying to keep my eyes open. Dispatch buzzed. Local motel reported noises from one of the rooms, crying baby, furniture being dragged. Problem was, that room wasn't rented out. Hasn't been for days. Room 203, the clerk said. It's empty, but I swear I heard it. It sounded routine. Noise complaints, misunderstandings, night shifts were full of them. Still, something about her voice stuck with me. She wasn't panicking, just disturbed, like whatever she heard didn't fit. I finished the coffee, turned on the lights and pulled out. I'd been to that motel before. Old place, barely lit. One floor with numbered doors and cigarette burns on every surface. Never thought I'd have to go back, but that night I did. The front office was dim, lit by a single buzzing fluorescent bulb. The clerk, a woman in her 50s, stood behind the counter, arms crossed tightly. She didn't look scared, she looked like someone who was trying not to admit she was. "I've been here 20 years, she said. "That room's been locked since Monday. No check-in, no cleaners, no one's been inside." Behind her, the room keys hung neatly on hooks. The tag for room 203 swayed slightly, even though no one had touched it. I asked about cameras. She frowned. "System's been down since the storm last week. Technician's supposed to come Thursday." Of course, I walked with her to the room log. No entries. No sign in. Nothing. The only light outside came from a dying street lamp casting long shadows across the lot. The hallway to the rooms was quiet, except for a humming soda machine at the end. Before heading out, I glanced back at the clerk. She wasn't watching me. She was watching room 203. The door to room 203 looked like all the others' faded paint. Dented frame, a brass number barely clinging to the surface. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. That's when I heard it. A faint, rhythmic sound, like a lullaby, followed by the unmistakable whimper of a baby. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled of dust and something else like old fabric, soaked in warmth for too long. It was clean, but stale, like it had been sealed off from the world. There, in the far corner, was a portable crib. A baby was sleeping inside. Small, bundled, chest rising and falling. I froze. No adult, no diaper bag, no sign of anyone else. Just the quiet breath of a sleeping infant. I backed out and shut the door. My heart was hammering. I radioed dispatch, but the signal crackled and dropped. The hallway was empty again. The soda machine buzzed. My footsteps echoed. Something was off. That child shouldn't be there. But it was. Back at the front desk, I asked again, "You're sure no one checked into 203? The clerk nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the security panel. "No one. That room's been dead all week." "There's a baby in there." She blinked, confused. "A what? A baby? Sleeping in a crib? That's not possible." She walked over to the wall panel, touched the key for 203. Still hanging. "No one signed in. Nothing's been cleaned. We didn't even prep that room this week." I asked for any paper trail. Invoices, check-ins, staff notes, anything that would place someone in that room. Nothing. The system hadn't logged activity since Monday. It was Thursday. I went back to the hallway, past the soda machine again. This time, it wasn't humming. The hallway felt different, heavier, like stepping into an attic that had been shut for decades. I stopped at the door, took a breath, and reached for the knob again. The door opened easily. No creak, no resistance, just quiet. The crib was gone. So was the baby. The bed was unmade now. Sheets twisted, pillows on the floor. A faint lullaby still played from somewhere, distorted and slow, like it was underwater. The radio. It sat on the nightstand blinking. I hadn't noticed it before. The tune repeated every few seconds, broken by static. I scanned the room again, closet empty, bathroom untouched, window locked from inside. I didn't know what I expected to find. I don't know what scared me more, the idea that someone had taken the child, or that the child had never been there at all. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. I turned toward the door to leave and it shut. Hard. The knob wouldn't turn. I stood still, heart racing. The lullaby cut out. Silence fell. Then I heard it. A breath, right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. No one. The room looked exactly as it had seconds before, empty, quiet, still. But something was different now. The mirror above the dresser was fogged from the inside. I stepped closer and wiped it. My reflection stared back. And then, behind me, something moved. Not in the room in the mirror. A shadow crossed the reflection. A figure, just for a split second. I turned again. The room remained empty. I opened every drawer. The last one, in the nightstand, held a folded paper, yellowed at the edges. An incident report. It was dated 12 years ago. Same motel, same room. Room 203. Report of a missing infant. The responding officer had entered alone. Baby was seen in crib, then vanished. Officer later claimed the baby was never real. Case closed. Mental evaluation ordered. I folded the paper, hands shaking. Whatever this was, it had happened before, and no one had believed him either. I stepped into the bathroom, trying to steady my breathing. The mirror was still damp, but I didn't touch it this time. The sink was dry. No signs of use, but the floor tiles were warm, as if someone had been standing there just moments ago. Then I heard it, a faint tapping. From inside the mirror, not behind it, not above or around it, inside. I leaned in. My own face looked strained, pale. I reached out a hand, but didn't touch the glass. That's when I saw them. Eyes, not mine, staring back from the other side. They blinked. I fell back, heart pounding. But when I looked again, it was just my reflection. Just me. The hallway outside was silent when I stepped out. My boots hit the floor harder than I expected. I kept my hand near my weapon, but didn't draw it. I looked back one more time at the room. Its light was off, but I hadn't turned it off. I didn't file a report that night, didn't mention the baby or the eyes, just wrote it up as a false alarm. But before I left, I told the clerk to keep the door locked. Told her not to go in, no matter what she heard. She nodded, but I could tell she'd already heard too much. A week passed. Then too, one night, sitting in my cruiser again, dispatch came through with a familiar tone. Noise complaint, motel, crying baby, room 203. I stared at the radio, didn't move. Just listened to the static and thought about the eyes in the mirror, and the officer who'd come before me, and the next one who might go in. I wasn't even supposed to be working that shift. It was a swap. One of those quiet favors you do for a buddy cover the graveyard slot. Get it back later. I didn't think twice. Nothing ever happens after midnight in this town. So when the call came through muffled static, half a voice, I nearly ignored it. Brookside Golf. Carts moving. No one should be out there. It was the way the dispatcher said it, like she didn't believe it herself. The course had been locked up for years. Weeds growing through the asphalt. Clubhouse boarded, no power. I remember sitting there in my cruiser, just staring at the radio. Something about the call made my skin itch. Like I'd heard it before, but that wasn't possible. I keyed the mic. 10 to 4, I'll take a look. Those were the last words I said that night that felt normal. The entrance to Brookside was wide open. Not broken, not forced, just open. Like someone had turned the lock and walked in like they owned the place. I drove in slowly. Headlights caught the white posts, the cracked pavement, and the faded letters on the welcome sign. It all looked drained, like color had been sucked out of it. Even the air felt thinner. I parked by the old pro shop. No power, no lights. But in the distance, past the first hill, something flickered. I stepped out, gravel crunched under my boots. The kind of silence that follows a screen-deep, uneasy waiting. Then I heard it, a soft hum. Low, electrical, like a cart motor idling. It came from the slope near hole 9. I turned off my flashlight. That was instinct. Something about the light made me feel seen. I moved in the dark. The slope opened to a wide stretch of grass, yellowed and uneven from years of neglect. Moonlight touched everything in pale silver. And then I saw it. A golf cart, parked near the edge of the putting green, headlights on, motor humming, but no driver. I crouched low, watching. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe the groundskeeper left it running. But that hum, it wasn't right. Too steady. Too clean for an old, broken-down cart in a dead golf course. I circled wide, keeping low in the brush. The cart didn't move, but the lights were on me, perfectly aimed. It was like it knew where I was. Then the hum cut off. The lights blinked out, total darkness, and I heard it roll. Not toward me, away, quietly into the course. I waited 5 minutes before moving, and I still felt like I was being watched. The path curved left, toward the old maintenance shed. A squat building, rusted panels, doors slightly ajar. The kind of place that still holds the smell of oil and sweat long after it's empty. That's where the light had come from earlier. It was off now. But I went in. Inside, dust hung in the air like fog. Shelves lined the walls empty, except for a single object. A radio, old wood casing, dials worn smooth. It was playing music low, grainy, like it was coming from another room. A woman singing something from the 50s. I turned the dial. Nothing changed. Pulled the plug. It kept playing. I opened the drawer beneath it. Inside was a card, laminated. A file tag like from an archive. It had my name on it, and tonight's date. No badge number, no department, just a name. And a time, 2:12 a.m. There was a corkboard on the far wall, old maps of the course. Weathered, torn at the corners. Colored pushpins marking holes, paths, intersections. One pin stood out bright red. Stuck in the middle of the map, between holes 8 and 9. Beneath it was a photo. My cruiser. Parked exactly where I left it, under that broken street lamp near the pro shop. The image was crisp, recent, taken tonight. I stepped back. The radio on the shelf crackled and changed songs, another 50s tune, this time instrumental. Something about it felt wrong, like it didn't belong to any real memory. I turned toward the door and paused. There were footprints in the dust. Not mine, small, bare, leading into the corner, but the corner was empty. At least, it looked empty. When I stepped outside, the course didn't match what I remembered. The trail I had taken in was gone. No gravel, no tire marks. Just uneven grass, high and wild, stretching where the road had been. The air felt heavier, almost damp, like walking through an abandoned greenhouse. I looked behind me. The maintenance shed had changed. The metal walls were now warped wood, the door nailed shut with planks that hadn't been there minutes ago. The windows had vanished. I moved toward where the clubhouse should have been, but the path curved wrong. It took me toward the edge of the course, near the trees. That's when I saw it, another golf cart, rolling slowly across the fairway. No headlights, no sound. It wasn't being driven. It just moved. I stood still, not blinking, barely breathing. My flashlight gave a weak pulse and died. The sky above was clear, but it felt darker somehow. The breeze had stopped. I turned slowly, scanning for my car, for any landmark. There was nothing. No cruiser, no light. Just the endless shifting green. I walked with no direction, just following what felt like space between the trees. The grass got denser. My boots sank slightly with each step. One found a small structure ahead, half buried, brick, with a rusted door tilted off its hinges. Looked like an old storage unit. Inside, it smelled like wet paper and mold. There were shelves stacked with binders. Old police logs, yellowed and curled from moisture. Some from the 70s, others with no date at all. I scanned names, dates, badge numbers. One binder was left open on the desk. It described a nighttime response to Brookside Golf Course. Officer arrived alone, saw moving carts. Reported strange lights. Radio contact lost at 2:12 a.m. Final note, no return. Last known location, hole 9. There was no name on the report, no signature, but the handwriting, it looked like mine. I ran, back toward where the road should have been, pushing through brush and uneven ground, chest tight, mouth dry. My radio was silent, dead weight on my belt. Then music, faint at first, the same melody from the shed radio. That soft, hollow 1950s tune. I crested the hill. The clubhouse lights were on, every window glowing yellow and warm, like it was still open for business. My cruiser was parked where I'd left it. Door shut, headlights off, but I hadn't turned on any lights. I walked up slowly, unsure if I should be relieved or terrified. Inside the cruiser, the radio lit up. Unit 43, respond. Possible trespasser at Brookside Golf Course. Carts reported in motion. Last seen near hole 9. Time of report 2:12 a.m. The dispatcher's voice didn't sound familiar anymore, and I didn't remember picking up that call. It came through at 2:08 a.m. I was halfway through a slow loop of the industrial district, where even the rats had gone to sleep. The radio crackled. The dispatcher sounded tired. Caller reports footsteps on his roof. No visual, possibly an animal. No damage reported. Then a pause. Same address as the last two calls. 1987 Grover Lane. Looks like the guy's calling again. I recognized the address immediately. Single-story house at the dead end of a cul-de-sac. Quiet neighborhood. I'd been there once before, maybe a month back. No evidence of break-in, no sign of anyone. Just a man who didn't like what he heard after dark. Still, something in his voice had stuck with me. Calm, too calm. Unit 41 responding, I said, turning the wheel without urgency. Copy. Marked non-urgent, came the reply. The drive took 8 minutes. Not a single other car on the road. Just streetlights blinking too slowly and the faint thrum of the engine beneath me. I rolled to a stop outside the house. The porch light was on, casting a yellow cone over the front walk. The man was already outside, waiting at the edge of the steps, arms folded. Same robe as before, same blank expression. "You came quicker than last time," he said, without smiling. I nodded. "You heard something again?" "Same time, same pacing. It walks a little slower now." He spoke without hesitation, as if he knew I wouldn't believe him and didn't care. "You check it yourself?" "I don't go up there," he said. "Why not?" He stared at me longer than was comfortable. "Because it doesn't like being seen, and it never leaves when it's seen." I looked up at the roof, still, silent, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel right. That's when I noticed it. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was watching the roof. He didn't ask me to come in, just turned and walked back inside, leaving the door slightly open. I followed after a moment. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, with the faint smell of coffee and something older wood maybe, or dust. The living room looked exactly how I remembered it from my last visit. Neat, minimal. One couch, one lamp, an old clock on the wall that wasn't ticking. A radio sat on a shelf, unplugged. He stood by the window, staring out at the side of the house. "You think it's the wind?" I asked. "No wind tonight," he said. "Check your weather app if you want." His tone wasn't sarcastic, just factual. Detached. I stepped over to the window. The yard was still. The trees weren't moving. No animals, no rustling. I scanned the roofline with my flashlight from inside nothing. "You hear the steps inside the house?" "Never. Always from above. Same time. Same rhythm, like it's walking in circles." "You've called this in before. What do you expect me to do tonight?" He looked at me and said, "You should go up. Just once. While it's still there." I studied his face. Not fear, something else. Resignation. Like someone who stopped trying to fight whatever this was a long time ago. I stepped out the back door to get a better look. The night air was colder than it should have been. Crisp and still, the roof looked dry. The shingles were clean, undisturbed. But I felt something that told me I wasn't wasting my time. From where I stood, the edge of the roof was just reachable with the portable ladder he kept along the side wall. He hadn't touched it. Dust coated the rungs. I looked up at the stars, then at the roof. It was too quiet. Like the silence was hiding something. The ladder creaked under my weight, metal cold against my palms. I moved slowly, keeping my flashlight low until I reached the top. My boots hit the shingles with a hollow thump. I stood still for a moment, adjusting to the angle of the roof and the sharp drop of silence all around me. It was dry, like I expected. No dew, no moisture. But when I swept the light across the surface, something caught. Footprints, clear, deliberate prints, darker than the surrounding shingles. They weren't muddy or dusty, just wet. A series of steps spaced evenly, like someone had paced in a line and stopped. The trail led to the edge above the bedroom, then disappeared. I knelt and touched one of them. Cold, not recent, but not old either. I followed the prints slowly. My beam bounced over the uneven tiles, scanning ahead. The final print stood alone, right at the edge where the roof met open air. No scuff mark from jumping off. No sign of where the person or thing went next. It just stopped. I turned off the flashlight for a second, trying to listen. Nothing. Not a whisper of wind, not a car, not even crickets. The roof groaned faintly beneath me. Just one subtle shift, like pressure changing underfoot. I took a step back. Another noise, very soft. Not from the roof, from beneath it. From inside the house. I crouched, listened hard. It wasn't talking or footsteps. More like something dragging along the ceiling. Not heavy, but slow, careful. I shined the light along the shingles again. My breath came shorter now. I wasn't alone up there. Even if I couldn't see anyone, the sense was clear, as if something had been watching me from the edge, waiting for me to find those prints. And now that I had, it had moved on. I climbed down slower than I'd gone up, the ladder trembling slightly with each shift of weight. When I stepped back onto the ground, I looked up once more at the roof. No movement. But the prints had been real. I wasn't imagining them. Back inside, the house felt different. Same layout, same furniture. But something was off. The hallway light was on now. I hadn't left it that way. And the clock on the wall earlier, stuck at 11:42, was ticking again. Loud. Too loud. It echoed against the walls, like it was the only sound left in the house. The man was in the kitchen, staring into a steaming mug he hadn't touched. "You were up there a while," he said, not looking at me. "You said no one goes up there." "No one stays up there," he corrected. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer, just turned and walked into the living room. That's when I heard it. A song, faint, distant, but unmistakable. An old melody, crackling through static. I followed the sound to a small radio on the shelf, one I had seen before. It was still unplugged. The music continued anyway. I turned it over, checked the back. Nothing hidden. No batteries. "You hear that?" I asked. The man didn't respond. I walked toward the hallway. Something about the layout felt unfamiliar now. The door to the attic hatch was open. The pull cord hung like a loose thread, swaying gently as if it had just been touched. I stared at it. My hand moved before I could stop it, pulling the cord down. The ladder unfolded with a soft click. Dust rained down from the ceiling. I don't know why I went up. Protocol didn't call for that, but I had to see something had changed. Not just inside this house, in this man in me. Halfway up, I smelled something. Wood, insulation, and something older. Something that hadn't moved in a long time. The attic was cramped, lined with insulation and old wood beams. My flashlight caught the dust hanging in the air, like it had been undisturbed for years, but I could see clear marks where someone had crawled through. Boxes were shoved to the side. A trail led deeper into the dark. I crouched, careful not to bump my head, and followed the path. Old picture frames, folded blankets, broken furniture. Then I found a box that looked newer than the rest. It was plain, unlabeled, sealed only with a loose flap. Inside were papers. Stacks of them, reports, files. I picked one up. It was a police incident log, my department's format. I flipped through a few pages. Then I saw my name. Not just once, dozens of times. Reports I didn't write. Calls I didn't take. One of them was tonight's call. It described me responding to 1987 Grover Lane. Observed footprints. Searched attic. Disappeared. My throat tightened. I shoved the papers back, heart racing. Then I heard it. Above me. Something moving. Slow, deliberate. I turned off the flashlight and held my breath. The wooden beams above flexed softly, not with steps, but with weight. Something was pressing down, crawling slowly across the roof, just a few feet above where I stood. I could hear the grain of the wood groaning with each shift. Not a raccoon, not wind. Too heavy, too controlled. My fingers moved to my holster. I stayed still. The movement paused, then one loud creak. Right above my head, I turned the light back on. A shape shifted in the corner of my eygon before I could aim. My back hit a beam. I ducked low, heart thudding. The noise faded. Whatever it was, it had stopped moving. But the pressure on the ceiling lingered, like something was crouched and waiting. I needed to get out. Now I climbed down from the attic fast, flashlight shaking in my hand, but my boots hit the hallway floor harder than I meant. The man wasn't there anymore. The living room was empty. The light over the sink flickered. Something about the air felt wrong. It was like I'd entered a copy of the house, not quite off, but hollow, missing something I couldn't name. I moved straight to the front door. Locked, deadbolt stuck in place. I didn't remember locking it. I tried again, both hands, nothing. Back door, same thing. The windows wouldn't open either. Every exit had become a dead end. Then came the sound from above, a single thud. Then another, not soft, not vague. Heavy steps, pacing again. The exact same rhythm the man had described. Only now it wasn't on the roof. It was following me from inside the ceiling. I backed into the kitchen, watching the hallway. No movement, no voice. I reached for my radio, pressed the button. Static. The connection was gone. No dispatch. Not even a click. Just that buzzing, blank sound. Then something shifted. Above me, like weight sliding across beams. The steps moved to the rear of the house. Faster now, deliberate. They stopped right over the garage. I didn't think I moved. The interior door to the garage was open, and this time the automatic opener responded. The door groaned upward, painfully slow. I got outside. Cold air hit my face, and I didn't even look back. I dove into my cruiser, slammed the door, tried to catch my breath. Then I saw it, in the rearview mirror. On the roof of the house. Something was perched there, low to the surface, head tilted. Its body didn't move, but it was looking straight at me, and next to it was another figure. Same size, same posture, wearing a uniform. Wearing mine. If you've ever gone through something similar, or know someone who has, leave a comment below. Sometimes, just telling it is already a way to protect yourself. And if this video made you think twice before letting your guard down, then it was already worth it. And if you want to keep hearing stories that might help keep you alive, subscribe. The next story could be yours.